heart that hurts. I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life mending broken people. Hello friends, and welcome to 3ABN Today. My name is John Lomacang and I have my co-pilot with me.
I'm Angela Lomacang. I'm glad that you've tuned in today, and you're going to be blessed today, aren't they?
I think that's an understatement, honey.
Oh.
This program is going to take you out of your office setting.
Yeah, it is.
If I could think about this program in a very unique way, I would say somebody might ask this couple, well, where's your office? Where do you go to work? And their response might be, anywhere on the planet where I'm called.
Yeah, and if you have a granddaughter, grandson, a child, a daughter, watch this program.
That's right.
It is for them. If they are adventurous, what do you think, honey?
I think adventurous will be the way it starts, but you'll learn today in this program that this couple is more than adventurous, very well trained, and the Lord has blessed them not only in their academia to prepare for what they do on a daily basis and a weekly basis, but also you have to have a passion for what this couple does.
Yeah, it's ministry, isn't it?
It's ministry, it's international rescue and relief. And you'll meet them in just a moment. But thank you for your prayers and support of this network that keeps us going and growing, getting ready for the coming of the Lord. I think I'm going to let you introduce them.
Oh, wow. I'm so excited. We have Andrew and Kalie Saunders, and they are from, Lincoln, Nebraska right now. But Kaylee is more than, she's family to us. Kaylee, we used to go to our school, and her mom was the principal of our school, Nancy O'Brien. It must have been nice, huh? Having your mom as a principal, your teacher.
Depends on how you behave.
That's right. And your dad, Joe O'Brien, he's been in the pastoral department, he said, for 20 years. So many people call in and they speak to Joe, and he's prayed and spoken with many people. So we're so happy to have you here. And of course, your husband. We're glad to have you here. And you've been married, how long have you been married now?
Almost 7 years.
Wow.
Wow. Almost 7 years already.
And tell us, Andrew, a little bit about your background.
Yes, tell us.
We talked about Kaylee growing up here. We've been here now, 16 years, and seen Kaylee grow up. And I'm very proud of the road you've taken and the life partner that God sent to be a part of your life. But give us some of your background, because maybe our viewers and listeners might say, we know Kaylee, but we don't really know who Andrew is.
So I grew up in the mission field, a different mission field than 3ABN, but my parents were, my dad was a surgeon in West Africa, in the country of Nigeria. And so I grew up there for 10 years in Nigeria. And it's kind of given me a passion to continue in mission and work internationally. So.
And kind of, what does your dad do?
So he's a general surgeon. He's back living in Africa again, in Malawi. Different hospital, but same mission, is trying to build local capacity so that we don't have to send foreign missionaries anymore necessarily, but training up local people to take on the mantle and minister to their own people.
Wow. And honey, while we've seen Kaylee grow up here, the question would be, in my mind, how did you both decide to choose what you do now, and kind of describe that to our viewers and listeners? How did you decide to choose what you do now as a life dedication, as a job, as a career?
I think it's hard to say, as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, graduating high school, it's almost impossible to be able to say, I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. There's just very few people that actually get that opportunity. So I was one of those people that I didn't know exactly where I wanted my life to go. I just knew that I wanted to live a life of service, where I could serve the people that needed the most help, wherever that was. And so personally, I was drawn to the International Rescue and Relief Program at Union College, because on top of being an academic program, a Bachelor's of Science degree, it also had a lot of adventure to it. Part of the program is learning survival and swiftwater rescue and technical rope rescue and search and rescue, and there's a semester abroad. And I just thought, you know, this is a great way to go into a life of service, even if I'm not exactly sure where I want to end up after it.
Wow.
And so when you talk about all these things, where's your office?
Well, they do.
Well, for the last 3 months, our office was in Malawi,
Wow.
but it's ranged. It's gone from several countries to several states. Just depends.
Where have you traveled to do this mission, I should say, IRR? Where have you traveled to as a couple?
As a couple, we've traveled. We actually used to work for ADRA. After we graduated with the International Rescue and Relief bachelor's degree, we went on to get our master's degree in International Development Administration with an emphasis in emergency management from Andrews University.
Nice.
And so once we had our master's there, we actually were hired by ADRA, and my husband and I both worked for ADRA in Ukraine, responding to the civil conflict there, and then also worked for ADRA in Iraq with the Syrian refugees at the height of the crisis there.
Oh my, that must have been pretty dangerous, being out there in Iraq.
Yeah, so we were 40 kilometers or so from the front lines, you would say, where ISIS was fighting.
Oh.
But where we were well taken care of. The ADRA staff were wonderful and made sure that we were never in danger.
Wow.
What were you doing there?
My husband, he could tell you about it. He was working very hard.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big job. Like at the time, there were several million people, both Iraqi displaced from the war, and then Syrians coming in that were also displaced. So both refugees and internally displaced people, we call them. And we were trying to do our part. We had a partnership with the International Department of Humanitarian Affairs in Canada. They were funding our project through ADRA. And we were doing cash for rent, so we give people places to stay. The camps were full. There wasn't space for more people to come into the camps, so we're trying to find them housing and trying to integrate them into the community, provide psychosocial support, vouchers so they could be able to afford hygiene items, be able to, like laundry soap and just personal hygiene items and things like that. So it was a $1.4 million project, and we were able to reach about 7,000 people. So
Wow.
Blessing.
So while there is some adventure and some tentative moments where you wonder what's going to happen, what could happen, the heightened aspects of it are there because of the field you're in or the theater that you're in. But for the most part, you stay out of harm's way. But obviously, anything is possible in the world that we live in. But I'm interested because when you talk about international relief and rescue, and both of you teach this at Union College, talk about that a little bit, because somebody might say, international relief and rescue, what do you actually teach? Tell me some of the specifics of the program.
all right. So it has a wide range of classes, and it kind of tries to prepare you for one of 3 different tracks. We have 3 emphases. You can go public safety, which would be police, fire, EMS, somewhere along those lines. And then with one of those, you'd spend 3 years at Union, with the 4th year either at police academy or paramedic school or something like that. And the first 3 years are a focus on getting your EMT license, some advanced skills like airway and breathing skills. We get wilderness medicine certifications. All units in the U.S. who do disaster response use the incident command system. So that way, if units come from anywhere in the U.S. and to a disaster, we can all know how each other work and fit into that command structure. So we teach that system so our people can fit right in. We teach technical rescue. So like Kaylee said, we have swiftwater, technical rope, search and rescue, flood water management. And then we also offer electives every year, and it could be advanced rope skills or ice rescue or confined space or things like that people can take beyond that if they're interested in that field. And then we also have tracks that do pre-professional. So if you want to do pre-med, pre-dent, pre-PA, something like that, you can also do the IR major and take all these classes, and it's a bit more fun than just your standard biology major.
Yes, it is.
And then Our third track, which we brought in when we came to the program with our background in ADRA, was a global community development track, where students are a bit more prepared to work internationally or with an NGO of some kind. And it's a bit more focused on grant writing, the same rescue classes like everybody else takes, but with more of a focus on less medical and more on NGO management and things like that, so they could work for ADRA, World Vision, or an NGO in the US as well.
Wow.
Nice. Now tell us about Malawi. How did that come about, you going to Malawi? I know your father is in Malawi, your parents are in Malawi. Were you raised in Malawi?
So I grew up in Nigeria for 10 years. I went to high school in Kenya, so I've lived a total of 12 years in Africa, but my parents are living in Malawi now. After I left them, they moved to a different country. So that gave us a connection for a place to go. But Kaylee's the overseas coordinator for the program, so she can tell you more about the planning.
Yeah. So for the 4-year Bachelor's of Science degree that International Rescue and Relief is, there's 2 exciting parts. So what Andrew was explaining about the rescue and like the technical rescue and stuff like that is taught immediately following their freshman year once they have their EMT certification. Then they jump right into all the rescue classes. But we hold off a little bit on the mission service until they can have a little bit more training in cultural diversity and like the social dimensions that are behind potential disasters and just what it's like maybe to expose them more to people of other cultures and that level of diversity. So we give them lots of classes, and then their final semester of college is when we do an overseas semester. So Andrew and I, we were students, and when we were students, we went for our overseas semester to Nicaragua. And the program had been going to Nicaragua for about 10 years. When we came back as professors, we led 2 semesters down to Nicaragua.
Nice.
And Nicaragua, we have really great connections, really great people, fantastic doctors that we work with, fantastic firefighters that we work with, like all of these amazing people. However, their government is a little unstable right now. And so they broke out into a little bit of, not a civil war, but there's a lot of unrest and rioting. And so because of the safety factor, we chose not to go back to Nicaragua this year, which was really a hard decision because we loved it so much. But when we knew, okay, we can't go back to Nicaragua, this is a very logistics heavy semester. You can't just take 16, 20 students to a country and show up. Like there's a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, a lot of ground that has to be paved first. So when we knew we couldn't go back to Nicaragua, we were all praying about it, trying to decide where's the best place for us to go. And it turns out that Andrew's family, his parents, are working in Malawi. And so they said, well, we can help. So we went just for a scouting trip for a week during the summer. And during that week trip, we could take a whole hour just telling you about all the miracles that happened in that 1 week alone. Just that God made it very clear, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that this is where He wanted us to go, that He opened the doors, we met all the right people.
Oh, even on the airplane, huh?
Yes, even on the airplane coming home, we sat next to the right people. So it was very clear God wanted us to go there.
That's right.
So we went forward with that plan, and for the whole fall semester, like we're both teaching classes in the fall semester, but on top of that, we're also in contact with everybody in Malawi and trying to work out the logistics of transportation and where we're going to stay. We wrote up
Where we're going to work.
Yeah, we wrote up work agreements with several different organizations. So we worked with the Adventist Health Services. We worked with
Adventist University.
Yeah, the Adventist University there in Malawi. We worked with the UNHCR, which is the High Commissioner for Refugees from the UN. There's a refugee camp there that we were able to work in.
A huge
so
camp.
just, yeah, a very large camp. So we were able to make all of these connections in the summer. And then I spent that fall planning exactly when and where we would be in each place. And then we were able to actually make it happen, and we spent our first semester abroad in Malawi just in this last year.
We, how many is we?
So Andrew and myself were the only staff that went. This year we had 14 students, It varies depending on the year, of course. Our first year leading the group, it was 21. Yep, so that was big. The next year was 8, and then this year was 14, so it varies.
Yeah.
And when you think about all those 14 going, do you tend to have more guys than girls, or is it pretty even?
It's been pretty even. It's pretty even. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of variation, but for the most part, for even the summer program after their freshman year, and then again for the overseas semester, it's pretty much split down the middle.
Yeah, plus or minus 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And when you think about the things that you do, I mean, International Relief and Rescue, we've been talking about this in preparation for the program. It's paramount to, I'm going to really strip it down here, it's paramount to you are on the lines to help others, but you have such survival skills. Because I asked, I said, well, when you train people, do you send them out with a flashlight? He said, no. Do they have any digital devices? No.
Any tents?
Any tent. But there's a, tell me about that. I mean, just kind of familiarize our audience with
Yeah,
that.
right.
Because there's an emergency kit they have, but when you're training these young people to kind of walk us through that Colorado scenario, I think that was very interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm going to dive back into Malawi.
Okay, so I'll talk about that then.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I plan is the summer intensive session, and that's a lot of fun. I love the international work, and that's what I grew up doing, and I'm passionate about that. But I think the summer portion might be more fun. So the first week of the 5 weeks that we do out in Southwest Colorado in the Four Corners area is survival. And we're at 8,000 feet. It's a beautiful ranch that we partner with another Adventist group that has a summer camp out there, and they have 1,400 acres that they let us use. So it's a beautiful, big piece of land, and it gives us a lot of space to be able to use and train. They've got cliffs, valleys, creeks. They were able to spread across this land and use it for different training purposes. So that first week of survival, we spend the first 3 days training the students, because we don't just put them out and say, hey, figure it out. We train them first.
Good.
And then we teach them how to build shelters, what plants are safe to eat, how to purify water, how to build snares, how to find direction, north, south, east, west, all that stuff. We teach them how to do it over 3 days. And then the next 3 days are a solo. We have this huge long canyon with a creek running down the middle, and we spread them out every half mile. And they have their own space that they work, and for 3 days they're out there by themselves. They have a list of tasks that they have to accomplish, but a lot of it we try to put a very spiritual focus on, and that gives them time to journal, to pray. We encourage them to take their Bibles with them, and most of them have never actually sat for that amount of time to think about who am I, what am I doing in my life, what do I want to do, to listen to God and to pray for that amount of time. And so they come out of the other side of that 3 days much more confident, because going in, a lot of them think they can't do it, but they come out feeling strong. If I can do that, I can do anything.
That's right.
Wow.
And then they also feel much closer to God, much more confident, and they're able to take on the next 4 weeks with feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, that's something I think I'd like to try out, but I might need a little bit
I
of
don't
preconditioning.
know. And you teach them how to eat, how to survive on various plants.
Yeah, it's very limited, so they know what plants are safe to eat. We teach them all the rules about, sedges have edges but rushes around, and which one is safe to eat, and aggregated fruits and all that kind of stuff, what's good and safe. And then for the actual solo, they're only allowed to take a very minimal amount of stuff with them. So they have a knife, a metal match, a water purifier, whatever they're wearing for a day hike, a small backpack, and some fishing line, paracord, snare wire, and a few other things like that. But it's very limited. No flashlight, like you were saying.
No flashlight.
No tent. They get extra credit for several things. Like if they don't use their sleeping bag and they build their shelter that's warm enough without having to use a sleeping bag, they get extra credit for that. We do have safety protocols built in as well. So they have to mark a trail from where we drop them off to where their shelter is, so we can find them in case of emergency. We give them radios and whistles in a black bag that's sealed, so they can break into that and radio for help if they needed anything.
Critical situations.
Yeah. We check on them every morning and night, so we have a mailbox from where we drop them off. Mailbox, it's just a little Tupperware container, and it's waterproof, and We leave flashcards in there, and they'll just tell us, I didn't sleep well last night, or I'm doing okay, or they just give us a little update about how they're doing. And we check on that every morning and night just to see how they're doing, but no verbal contact unless something is happening that we need to pull them out for some reason.
That is really good, because what that does is that rips us away from the convenience. I don't have a spoon. Could somebody give me something to eat?
Yep.
Well, where's the cereal? I mean, it's right around you. It's in the forest.
Everywhere.
It's really interesting. It's off the grid kind of training. So you develop a mindset that you begin to see in nature, and in situations that may be traumatic to the person living in the city, you may see, wow, there's so much out here we have access to in comparison. And that's amazing. You want to try it out, honey?
I don't know. Actually, it would be interesting. Well, I don't know. But let's get back to Malawi,
That's right.
because we have. Tell us more about that.
The miracles. There's some things that happen in Malawi that we brought. You have some videos and pictures.
Yeah.
Maybe I think what we should do is go to maybe some of the videos, and then we'll come back and dive into the specifics of Malawi. Maybe you could lead us into what we see, or let us know what we see afterwards.
If I could just give you a brief of what to
Yes.
expect. We went there, obviously, like I said, it's a semester abroad. It's very service oriented. It's all about service. The students know that they're going there to not necessarily get much out of it for themselves. It's academic, of course, but it's service oriented. And we had a very tight schedule planned. We had everything, organized out, everything that was supposed to happen, because from like my perspective, from Andrew's perspective, we have to make sure that they meet certain requirements, because everything is for a letter grade. And they have to be able to accomplish those skills in order to graduate, right?
Right.
However, while we were there, near the very end, because we're there from January until April, so near the very end of March, we had our regularly scheduled programming, if you will, that we were going to when the Cyclone Idai, came through and devastated parts of Mozambique and the southern portion of Malawi. So when that hit, the students were aware of the situation, and they knew this is actually something that we're trained to be able to help with. They've gone through all of the swiftwater rescue, the technical rope rescue, the survival, the flood management classes. They know what it's like. They know what they need to do in order to be able to respond. Plus, we'd been there for almost 3 months at this point, doing medical clinics. The majority of our time was for medical clinics, and so they're, very used to the routine. And when this happened, everyone is thinking, is there maybe a chance that we could go and help? Because we're here, like we're trained, we're capable, and we're not even that far away. We're in the same country that needs the help.
Yes.
So we knew it was a great opportunity. We didn't want to go against what we had already planned, but we also wanted to be open to the leading of God. And so we stopped and we prayed and we said, God, we already have our plans. We already have this academic program that we need to complete. However, if it's your will, if this is what you want us to do, if you want us to stop what we're doing now and go and respond to this disaster, we need you to answer our prayer. We need a fleece. So we put our fleece out and we said, if it's your will that we go, we ask that we will have an official invitation by an official organization like the Malawian government or another NGO that was responding, that they would reach out to us and contact us and ask us to go with them. And it had to be that day, because we only had a week worth of time that we could actually go and help. So we said, God, if this is your will, let it happen today. So we prayed about it all day. We went about our normal business, what we had planned already for the day.
Which was actually another huge honor and kind of a God thing. Was we were working at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees refugee camp in Malawi, which had over 30,000 refugees in it.
Wow.
And a huge need there as well.
Yes.
And so we went to the camp and met all the right people there. It was kind of a God thing that they were all there at the same time.
Yeah, it's true, because this is we had already known that it was a possibility that we would respond. And we were there at the camp, and what was his position? Gideon's position.
He was the director of health and response for all refugees in the country.
Yeah, and we had met him a couple days earlier and gotten to know him some, and he just happened to come back that day. And we were like, oh, well, okay. Do you know, like, is there a need? Does the government need anybody to come and help? And he said, I think yes.
He's like, I happen to know the deputy director for the response.
Oh my.
Let me give you his phone number.
Oh my.
So you already see the pieces coming together.
I do, yeah.
But you still have to get the invitation.
Right,
Right,
exactly. So Andrew did contact them and explained like the credentials that we had and the experience that we had, and that we were willing and able to help. And we, like I said, we were praying the whole day.
And Dr. Kingsley was in the camp too that day.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually were there and praying about this and what to do. And like we said, the director of health for refugees was in the camp that day, and introduced us to the deputy director for the response to the cyclone for Malawi. But also we were working for the United Nations at this point, and we had a signed memorandum of understanding with them that we'd work in the camp X amount of days. And the head of office for UNHCR was in the camp that day, meeting with this other individual that gave us the phone number, and we had them both there at the same time. Yes, there's a need. I'll connect you with the right person. And Dr. Kingsley, the director of UNHCR, the country director, said, and yes, I realize there's a need. You can leave your memorandum of understanding early and go to the response. So we were released and allowed to go, and we were given the contacts on how to get there.
Wow.
Oh.
Within, like, and the two guys were there talking to each other.
But still no invitation.
But still, right.
Right.
You need that.
Yeah, but like the steps were being laid.
Yes.
And so we went through the entire day, still had heard nothing. We were kind of starting to wonder, maybe this isn't God's will, It was late at night. We were getting ready for bed, actually. And I think we might have actually even just like said goodnight, and we were already like just done for the day, and we had actually just sat down, and Andrew looked at me and he's like, well, maybe it's not God's will. Maybe we're not supposed to respond. And this was at like 11:30 at night. And he just, picked his phone up to plug it in and saw that there was an email sitting there in his inbox at 11:30 at night from the Malawian
Deputy Director of Response.
Yeah, asking us to please come.
Look at that.
So when you see the response come through, God is obviously saying, this is what I want you to do. And it changes your whole perspective. Say, the Lord is now taking over and we're going to follow into his mission.
Amen.
And you brought some pictures and some videos with you to kind of walk us through that. We'll go to the pictures first and you'll tell us what we see.
Sure. So this here is a picture of our team. You can see the blue t-shirts with our IRR logo over their shoulder. The people in uniform are actually the Malawi Defense Force as well as the South African Defense Force.
Wow.
South Africa actually came up with a helicopter and medics to help provide medical relief for Malawi.
And supplies too, food, water, bedding.
This is us packing, trying to get ready for the morning because the roads, everything was just completely flooded and washed out. And so the only way for us to access these clinics was by helicopter. So the South African military actually flew us in via helicopter over the flooding. We only had so many pounds we could take on with us. So we know we're going to be seeing hundreds of patients, but we only have X amount of medications that we can actually take with us. So we had to pack very strategically. This is us landing on our first mission with the South African Defense Force. You can see the people just waiting. They heard the helicopter coming from a long ways off. That's me there in the rescue and relief shirt. And they heard us coming and they knew it was help.
Oh.
And these are people that actually the rainy season was happening. Yeah, here you can see they're clapping.
Beautiful.
Wow.
They're happy to
Yes.
see you. Oh.
They're glad that some help
This
has
relief,
come. When you get to
Yeah.
that kind of setting, how do you just kick into gear? I mean, tell me what do you do when you land and what happens next?
Well, thankfully, we had been doing 3 months of medical clinics leading up to this point. So the students that we took with us, they were well trained. They knew exactly their roles, they knew exactly what to do, and they knew how to do it very well. And so as soon as we would land, we'd carry our gear off the aircraft. And usually we would meet with the village chief, and they would direct us to a building that we could use. So there's no standard clinic building in each village. So it's whatever they have to offer. Sometimes it was one classroom from their school. Sometimes it was a church. Sometimes they did have a clinic facility, but they had no clinicians or medications, and so they would let us use the empty building. It really would just depend. And so as soon as we would land, we'd carry our gear out, and the students knew exactly. Andrew had them writing up all of the FEMA documents. Basically, you can explain it so the students knew their role each day.
Yeah. So I was, while Kaylee was out managing the clinics and everything, I was the one staying back in the capital, or in the base of operations, working with the other players, so the Malawi Defense Force commanders and the South African Defense Force commanders, and planning for the next day, and where we'd go the next day, and like who would do what, and all that kind of stuff. And we would take, like we said, we train all our students in the incident command structure from the same system that we use across the U.S. With FEMA. And we used all the same forms. We had our emergency operation plan, for the whole response, and then every day we'd write a new incident action plan. So what we were doing for that operational period, and everybody had their work assignment and knew exactly what their role was. So as soon as we got on ground, everybody knew exactly what they were supposed to do, and what was expected of them. So
we were a totally like self-sufficient, basically clinic. So we had our own intake. We had students working triage, where they would get everybody's vitals and chief complaints. We could determine who was the most sick, and so if there was somebody that had a dire need, we could get them to the front of the line to see a doctor immediately. This picture is them in triage. You can see the line forming behind them.
Long line.
Yes. So we had triage. We had students working, seeing patients. At this point, like I said, they had seen they'd seen thousands of patients by the time we were done with the semester. Here is our lab, actually. We could test blood.
Really?
We could test for malaria. We could test, urine to see if they had infections or anything like that, so we would know better the medications to prescribe. Here's just more intake, seeing patients. So we had providers as well. We did hire Malawian doctors to come with us to oversee everything, because we're not doctors.
Right.
So we're just making sure that the standard of care we were providing was as high as possible. The doctor signed off on everything we did. And then, of course, they'd end with medications from our pharmacy. This picture I'd like to stop on for 1 second. This is a internally displaced camp. You can see here, these are people from many, many villages that have lost everything. Their homes have been washed away, their crops have been ruined. They've most likely lost all of their possessions except for what they could carry. And you can see, this was lunchtime, so the women are they have claimed stake on this one section of concrete. They're starting to cook lunch.
Wow.
You can see behind them the many, many sheds. Pavilions, yeah, they're massive, with hundreds of people in each, and that's all they have to their name at this point.
in this camp, they had 30 different camps across the country, across the affected area, and that camp specifically was one of the bigger ones. They had about 13,000 people in that camp.
That many? What were the needs?
Everything.
Everything?
Yeah, food, water, bug nets. I mean, because imagine the flood water is rising, and you can just take with you what you can carry. You know, so they lost their clothes, their school books, their, you know, everything they lost. So.
Yep. Yeah.
It's terrible.
Some of the miracle stories that happen out of this, because I know that when you go on a mission for the Lord, He's not just going to send you and say, well, hey, handle it, you're trained. The Lord often moves mountains to make what we think is very, very difficult obvious that He's involved in the mix. What are some of the things you experience when you're out on the service, serving these individuals that, you know, hey, this is a God thing. He's working in here. He's moving in our behalf.
I think in addition to obviously Him calling us to go, as we specifically asked, we also had the issue of funding it, because we had to be able to buy all of the medications for our very own pharmacy. We had to be able to buy food. and water and things like that for our staff, just so that we could feed them and make sure that they were staying healthy as well.
Like Kaylee said, we were totally self-contained. We had our own physicians, we had our own team, we had our own food, water, shelter, transportation, as far as vehicles and everything. So we had to be that self-contained unit so that we weren't a burden on anybody else in the response.
Yeah.
Because there's already short supply. We don't want to add to that.
Yeah, and at this point, it was near the end of the semester. Our funds had been drained. We had just enough to finish out the last couple of weeks as planned, not to fund a huge response effort. So the day after we got the call at 11:30 at night saying, please come, we told the students the next morning, and we said to them, like, obviously, you know, this is God's will. He's asked us to go. He's called us to go.
Yes.
And he's not going to let us down now, but we need you to pray for money. We need you to pray for funds because we can't afford this. So the students, they all started praying as well. They went about their day as usual too, because there's very little we could do in preparation without some money coming in. But by early afternoon, we went from absolutely no money for this response to having $13,000 pledged
Wow.
for the response in a matter of hours. And mind you, this is the middle of the day Malawi, which is the middle of the night US, where all their friends and family are.
How did you
So-
raise the funds?
Sorry?
How did you raise the funds?
It was generous friends and family of our students.
Oh, what a blessing.
Look at that.
Yeah, we put a call out as well to some of our previous donors. So one that was very gracious and worked with us in a previous response. This is not the first response we've gone to. We've also been to, Haiti, with,
Ike, Sandy.
Harvey in Texas. We've gone to several in the past. So,
So not just overseas, but also some
Yeah.
in the country,
Yes.
rescue situations. You mentioned Texas.
yeah, we led a team down to Texas a couple years ago as well. That was a big response as well. So we reached out to some of those same donors who had helped us in the past. Brother's Brother being one of them. They're a great NGO that works overseas as well. They gave us some funding. We had some people from California, the Napa Valley Association gave us some funding as well. Different family members, and yeah, it was amazing to see the generosity that came
Yeah.
Blessing.
with that.
So literally within hours of our first miracle, we had our second miracle where we had actually raised more money than we even thought we would need. We had estimated we would need about 10,000, and 13,000 had been pledged right off the bat. So that was definitely
That was
just,
God.
we already knew that it was God's will, but if there was any doubt in any of our minds, any of the students' minds, there was no way they could wonder anymore.
And what would that money provide? What would that money be used for?
So it was for every single step of the operation. So we hired vehicles
Okay.
because we needed to be able to transport ourselves back down to the south. It was what funded our pharmacy. So we were able to purchase medications, the lab equipment that we needed, things like that.
Medications are expensive. That's
Yes.
where the majority of the money went was to the
Yes,
pharmacy.
they're very, very, very expensive. But we were able to actually get discounts even for that,
Oh,
which was
good.
another miracle that God provided. Our money went further.
Having worked with the Adventist Health System for the last few months, we were actually basing out of the hospital where my parents were working at the time, or are still working. We were with them at the time. And the business manager there said, hey, you can use our pharmacy number and buy the drugs at wholesale instead of retail.
Wow.
So that saved us a
Nice.
huge amount of money. We were able to make it go much farther.
Yep.
Now, the reason I asked that question is because first you have to get the invitation. The Lord opened that door
Yes.
late in the midnight hour. And then, okay, we got the invitation, but what are we going to use? And that's where the funds came in. We're glad to go now, but Lord, what are we going to use to help this relief effort? We know there's going to be a lot of need, food, clothing, water, but then the supplies, the medicine, the triage that you're going to carry on. The reason I'm saying this is because we did a triage in the jungles
with
of Zimbabwe.
Maranatha. Yeah.
Yeah, we were out there. You almost had a chance to pull somebody's teeth.
Yeah, I was about to pull someone's tooth, and they said, we got to go. I was so happy. They said, we got to go now. And so they were showing me, they said, we'd like you to pull a tooth. And, the dental guy was there.
Yeah, he was
doing
there. He
that.
already numbed and everything. And he showed her how to do it, and it was training on the spot.
He said, would you like to pull a tooth? Okay.
And she said,
I was rescued at the last minute. Well, we need to go.
but the triage idea in a situation like this in Africa, you know, there's some very, very developed parts of Africa, but then when you go into these underdeveloped areas,
Or post-disaster.
post-disaster, that's the other aspect of it.
Yes.
It's not only, you know, homes that are built out of some of the most basic elements that are available, but then all of a sudden a flood or a tornado, or in this case a cyclone, which is a tornado in America, comes through and just devastates water, blows away everything a person has.
Yeah.
You're going into a very disadvantaged situation.
Yeah.
And then what about the chances of getting malaria and all that? That's
Yeah.
also heightened, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Typhoid, cholera, all of these things, the chances of contracting it goes up.
Yeah, which for our team, we were already taking malaria prophylaxis and and had vaccinations to prevent most of these things. But
Yeah.
for the indigenous population, a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like what you were just saying, I think that's a very important concept because floods in the U.S. are absolutely devastating. Families lose everything and it's horrible. But a flood in the U.S. does not wipe away our food supply for the next
No.
year.
So true.
And that's what these people are facing currently right now is that these floods have washed away their crops. And at this point, there's no chance for them to be able to recover that food before the next season.
When you're a subsistence farmer and you have no other source of income, and you're living off of what you eat and sell the extra for a little bit of money, now you've lost your livelihood and your food.
That's right. Because we saw a home, I think it was in either Zimbabwe or Zambia, that was pretty much a thatched hut.
Yeah.
You know, with kind of mud and
Mud.
straw and all. And we saw a hole in the wall of it, and we said, what will it cost to fix that?
Yeah.
And it really broke our hearts to see that, wow, if a really heavy rain came through,
Yeah.
we know that that house would just disintegrate. But the Lord was able to reach out and touch. So you're in that kind of a situation when you go to places like Malawi. How do you determine when your need, when your services have supplied enough need so that you could leave it now to the locals or to the government, and you say, okay, it's time for us to pull back or move out?
So we were doing, as I said, medical clinics, but we were also basically an assessment team on the ground for the government.
Okay.
So we were going to places, getting out there like right away as soon as we could. They were taking us there. And these villages had, some of them, like we said, had thousands of people. And our team, we didn't have enough capacity within our team to be able to treat all 1,000 of them. But what we could do then is we could treat the most immediate needs, the sickest of the sick, we could treat them. And then what I was doing every day was I was taking statistics of all of the patients that we'd seen, sometimes hundreds of people. I was tracking the statistics, and then I would report those to the government at the end of the day saying, this place, we have outbreaks of schistosomiasis or something like this. This place has the most malaria we've seen so far. And I could tell the government what we saw, and then they could at least have an estimate of how dire the need was there, and then they could return later over and over again as the weeks progressed.
Wow.
And be able to talk to the people on ground and be like, what are your biggest needs here and now? Is it water? Is it food? Is it shelter? Is it bug nets? Is it, what is your biggest needs here and now? And what do we need to take back to the response committee and so that they know what to be planning for in the future?
So while we couldn't meet every single person's need, we hope that we at least pave the way for future response teams and the government to be able to come back and meet those needs better in the future.
Now you have needs, don't you, for your school? Aren't there needs for Union College there? You want to build a technical rescue center you were talking about? Tell us about that.
So, we strive for excellence in our program. We really want to make it the best that we can. And I think that this response is a prime example of the quality of the education that we've been able to provide. The students were ready and willing. And another miracle we didn't talk about was how when we showed up, one of the South African colonels wasn't really excited about us being there. He wasn't sure of our capacity. And by the end of it, he sat us down for a lessons learned for 30 minutes and asked us what we were doing and why we worked so well. And he was impressed with us and what they could do better for the continued response.
The South African military told us that we were the most professional team they'd worked with there.
Wow, praise God.
So that was a great testament to our program, and we want to keep pushing to be better. You never want to be stagnant. The industry keeps pushing forward, and we want to be part of that. And as an academic and educational facility, we want to spearhead some of the best techniques out there and teach our students those things to stay up on the best practices.
So the Technical Rescue Center, tell us about the need for that and what it will facilitate. We talked about that a little bit. I was very impressed to look at the vision that you had for that, to know that it's not just something that would help the school and the students, but it has a larger capacity to equip other individuals. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we're in the very, very beginning stages of it. We've got some architectural drawings that, and a local architecture firm donated their time and effort for us, probably about $30,000 worth of effort just for the drawings that have been given to us, donated to us already.
Wow.
And they're amazing drawings, places that we could practice confined space, rescue, trench rescue, technical rope, overturned vehicles, collapsed structure, grain bin silo rescues, all this kind of stuff in this one building. And there's nothing like it in the Midwest. There's some things out on the east and west coast, like Seattle, California, New York, Texas has a couple of facilities, but there's nothing in it like that in the Midwest that trains to the National Fire Protection Association standards, which we do. We train to those standards, and we'd like to be able to offer those training standards and classes to the fire departments and response teams in our area. We just had some flooding in Nebraska, and we were able to respond to that as well, a different team than us, but also IRR students with the professors that were still in the U.S.
Wow.
And during the response and rescue efforts, 7 firefighters in our region almost died because they didn't have the proper training.
Oh, no.
And we would like to change that and be able to have a center at Union College that would be a center of excellence and be able to provide that kind of training.
So what happened is they encounter situations that they didn't really actually get training for, but this facility, because you talked about some of the mock-ups, I think I'm gonna use that phrase, mock-ups, so like a silo rescue, some of the other things you just described, if they actually faced that crisis and knew how to handle it in a mock-up of that set, then they won't have to face it for the first time and say, now what do we do?
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we teach the swiftwater rescue, flood management, tech rope, confined space. We do all that. And if we could train them on how to do that properly and safely, we could prevent rescuer deaths and civilian deaths.
Because it's kind of like I'm in a situation where I can only travel from one place to the next in a helicopter, but then when we get there, they say, okay, well, we're not landing, you have to parachute out. And I say, well, I've never parachuted before. We'll just put it on and just kind of pull the rope when you see that thing goes red and just land and pull your feet up. You should be okay. That's kind of what you're talking about. There are situations where, unfortunately, people that are very well trained in other areas are not trained, and it could really risk their lives.
Oh, yeah. And
not only theirs, but the other people they're trying to take care of.
Yeah, in the rescue world, we say never try anything new on scene. You need to practice it first before you try it in the real world. And there's always a priority of rescuers too. Like you are the highest priority on a rescue scene, because if you go into a place that you're not trained or capable to rescue in, and you become another victim, you've just made the situation worse.
Wow.
Which is what happened. These 7 guys, they went out to try and save someone, didn't know what they were doing, and then they got stuck, and the Coast Guard had to come and save them, and they just ended up making the situation worse. We want to train how to prevent that, to know what you're doing, to be capable and be able to make a difference.
What about vehicles? Do you need vehicles?
So as part of our goals to be better, there's a few things that we'd like to have for our program that would help us. More medical supplies for our EMT courses. Medical is a big part of our program. Emergency medicine, as well as a couple vehicles like for our technical rescue side. We'd like a big F450 that we could put all our rescue equipment on and be able to respond to scenes with that, as well as an ambulance also for the medical training.
That's an SUV, F4 to F450.
Yeah, a big pickup truck that we put all our gear on. Other things that would be great would be more tech rope gear, swiftwater gear, flood management gear like dry suits and things like that. We actually have a full list.
Wonderful.
We have a wish list for sure.
And you talk about response cache also. Just touch on that real quickly.
Yeah, so all of that would go into our gear cache. So it would help us with our training, our ability to train the people around us, and our ability to respond. Like we said, we've been on many responses, and that's a part of our real world experience, that our students are trained for it and then get that experience in the real world on an actual scene.
And that's why we want to make sure that our listeners and our viewers are going to be able to get the information that they need, because we are just touching the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're looking at their world, as it were, through the pinhole of television.
Yeah.
And you saw some pictures, some video, and that's just a microcosm of what they actually have been doing and what they're going to be exposed to in the future.
Yes.
What I like about Andrew and Kalie is that they want to equip people. They want to make the students that are coming up in this program come into a very well-furnished environment.
Yes.
Because I think of the dollar value, I think of it this way, you know, the Bible uses it this way. This is my illustration. If the shepherd if they could strike the shepherd, the sheep will scatter. And so they're in that shepherding role in the sense of emergencies.
Yes.
Their dollar value is high. They're so well trained. You know, one of them get hurt, not having the right supplies, not having the right response cash, then all of a sudden it puts hundreds or thousands of lives at risk. You know, it's amazing when I think about what you guys have done and what you're planning to do, how important and imperative it is to have the right supplies to be able to accomplish that.
Exactly.
Not only for the students that are coming up, but for the training of extra emergency individuals outside. In the Midwest, I like that you focused on the Midwest, where right now we don't really have that kind of facility. And so if you'd like to get in touch with Andrew and Kalie, either as a financial sponsor, a person that's capable of providing that F450, that SUV for supply.
Pickup truck.
It's an SUV pickup truck. That's right, pickup truck. Thank you, honey. And I should know better, right? I should know about trucks.
Well, yeah.
But the response cash, building that technical research center, here's the information that you're going to need to be able to make that a reality. You can contact them at this email, ucinfo@ucollege.edu. That's ucinfo@ucollege.edu, or call 402-486-2600. Once again, 402-486-2600. And I know, honey, if we ever take the challenge up, maybe one day we'll just maybe we'll go just to see what you do.
You're more than welcome.
It wouldn't hurt, because I could tighten my muscles up here. But
Good rescue course.
it's amazing. When you look back on what you've done so far, what can you say has been the most valuable lesson you've drawn out of what you've done so far? I'll start with you, Kalie.
Oh no. The most valuable.
Yeah.
Most valuable lesson.
It doesn't have to be the most, but a valuable lesson that you've drawn from, because you're still learning, you're still growing.
I think from my time as a student, because I started as a student before going back as a professor. From my time as a student, I think just the experiences in my life that forced me to rely on God. It gave me confidence in my relationship with Him. But also, there were a lot of instances where God had me get myself out of my mess. And so it grew me in my character and my confidence in my ability as a person, giving me the confidence then to go on and do a master's and to work with ADRA and to go overseas and eventually to come back and work as a professor.
Right. Andrew, what about you?
I think every person has a different calling. You know, originally, I thought I was going to be a medical doctor, and then found something else that had my passion. You know, I think saving people physically is what I feel called to do. You know, there's saving people spiritually is what you guys do on a daily basis, and for us, I think I like to follow the other side of what Jesus did. You know, where He fed the hungry and took care of the sick and clothed people, and that I think that's what my calling is, and to show that love physically for people, and I think this program is the best way to do that. It's a great way to train to actually meet people's needs and try and share God's love in there as you build a relationship with them and take care of them, show them you care.
You know, life lessons are so important to glean from the work that you do, because as you go down the road many years from now in the same field, you're going to be able to write a memoir and talk about what we did in different parts of the world. And it's amazing to see that these two lives are dedicated to making a difference in everyone else's life. It's amazing.
Yes,
And we're going to take a short news break for some announcements, and on the other side of the news break, we'll be back for a few closing thoughts. Don't go away. Well, friends, our time comes and goes so quickly. And wasn't this a wonderful program, honey?
Absolutely. I mean, I've learned so much, and yet there's so much more to learn if you want to be a part of this ministry, I call it, because it is a ministry.
That's right.
Rescuing what? The perishing.
Rescuing the Perishing, International Rescue and Relief. Andrew, Kalie Saunders, thank you so much for being here today. You know, there's probably some young person that's just glued to the screen right now saying, Mom, I need to do this. I want you to look at that camera right there, right in front of you, and just what encouraging word, 15, 20 seconds can you give to somebody who might be watching saying, what would you tell them about getting involved in this kind of adventurous and meaningful life?
You want to start?
What would you both say?
I guess, first of all, would be, I hope, you know, this is what we love. This is what we've spent the majority of our time doing. So if you're interested and encouraged, like, do it. But we also want to just encourage you to please, you know, follow the calling of God in your life. And some people are called for this. Some people are called for other very important things. And we need everybody. God needs everybody, all people of all kinds. So if we've inspired you, please check us out. Otherwise, let God lead you.
Amen. That's right.
Amen.
But thank you for coming here today. We know that people in Malawi, the other 30 countries you've been to, the 40-plus countries you've been in, and the diversity in your family and your ministry, we know it's going to continue going and growing, honey. And we probably want to go one day and see what they do.
I would love
they
to.
invite us to go on the ground.
Yeah,
ground
Colorado, huh?
Yeah, we'll start in Colorado before we go to Malawi.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being a part of the 3ABN family.
Yes.
We appreciate all that you do to keep this network going and growing,
Amen.
getting ready for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. People need to be rescued every day. With Christ in your life, you can make a difference. God bless you until we see you again.